Thank you for joining us for our capstone presentation, Law as Data. I am Matt with Sood and Evan. Our client is Professor Michael Livermore of the UVA School of Law. What we started with in this project was 30,000 Supreme Court documents, dating back to the first Supreme Court cases with John Jay as Chief Justice and all the way through 2008. And so the first thing we did was sort of decide on parsing it down in terms of the time period between 1900 to 2008. And then we did a lot of pre-processing in the first semester, which Evan will touch on. But at the end of the first semester, start of the second semester, we really had to narrow down on a research question. And what that ended up being was, throughout time, if we look at document distance between majority and minority or dissenting opinions of Supreme Court decisions, were these document distances converging or diverging? Were these justices throughout time talking past each other or finding common ground in terms of language? And so that was our main motivation in terms of our research. Certainly, we took a two-part ethics course that bled into our capstone project, and we wanted to be aware in that of hidden biases in our data, in our own analytics. We were aware that we came to the table with our own political opinions, and we would be analyzing political and controversial cases, that we had to sort of be aware of our own biases, be aware of hidden biases in the data that a lot of times came in the form of demographics that Evan is going to touch on.
So as we are looking at these opinions written by the Supreme Court justices, we really wanted to get a sense of who these Supreme Court justices are. So that way we can get an understanding of maybe influential ideologies. And we found that they are not a very diverse group. There's only ever been 5 women Supreme Court justices and 3 minority Supreme Court justices. And so, like I said, this doesn't really make for a very good diverse set of possible influential ideologies. And so we had to be aware of that. We also looked at the number of states that have or have not produced a Supreme Court judge. And we found that 19 states, or about 40% of the United States, have not produced a Supreme Court justice. And this can be very interesting and have interesting implications. When there are Supreme Court cases of an individual or group of people versus a state, it's possible that none of the justices have ever come from that state, and the full cultural and social context could be lost on them as a group. Now, next, to get the data ready for analysis, there was some pre-processing that needed to be done. As we are measuring the distance between majority and dissenting opinions, we first removed unanimous decisions in which there were no dissenting opinion. Next, we wanted to better just organize the data with adding the actual titles and the justice author to the cases, and organize them by the case themselves. In order to actually prepare this data for analysis, we took the opinions that were written and we tokenized it, and we broke it down into the individual word components of the opinions. And this allowed us to do things like create bag of word tables, document term matrix, corpuses, vocabularies, and we can actually get a very good sense and begin to analyze the words, phrases, and specific language used in those opinions, and allow that analysis to begin.
7. So once the pre-processing and the tokenization was done, the first question it had was, what kind of vector space do we want to use? And not only what vector space, but also what libraries or packages we want to use, because as you've learned as a part of this program, that it's just as important that you use the right packages so that you have an end product that is coherent. So for vector spaces, we decided on TF-IDF, which is a very basic vector space, but we wanted to add doc2vec, which is created by Jensen, which is again a very standardized library in practice today. We also created topic models using LDA and NMF, which is the non-negative matrix factorization. What that allowed us to do was add to our vector space. So we had TF, IDF, and doc2vec, but we extracted the theta tables, which is nothing but document topic matrix, from both LDA and MMF for our vector space. With that in place, we got to work with creating our distance measures. Now, again, we had a very healthy debate on what distance measures to use. We could have used Jacquard or others, but we finally settled in consultation with our client and professor. We used Manhattan, cosine, and Jensen-Chen. With these distance measures in place, we wanted to save them in SQL database or a database so that it was easy to reproduce the results. And also, it will be a single source for our queries and for all our charts. With that in place, Matt is going to take you into our results and conclusion.
So it's always interesting, certainly, when your analysis and results completely contradict your research hypothesis and what you expect to see. So as you can see here, we had a strong negative correlation between time and document distance, which is sort of the opposite of what we expected, just contextually. This is just one of three of the distances that we used. They all showed essentially the same thing. This is cosine distance, as you can see, that throughout time, there was a clear decrease in distance between majority and dissenting opinions in these cases. So each one of these data points represents 1 year. And what we see here is a clear negative quadratic curve. We looked at all different degrees of correlation. So we also saw in our analysis a high positive correlation between time and document length, which makes sense. Throughout time, language presumably has gotten more and more complex. And so we have different words and different document lengths that we can use. And so what we wanted to look at, though, was there a correlation between a rising document length and a declining document distance? And certainly we want to prove that if there was a correlation or not. So we use a pairwise t-test for dependent means, extremely low p-value that you can see there. So we had strong evidence that suggested there was a high correlation between rising document length and our declining document distance. We can't assume causation with this, for better or worse. So I think that if there were a next step, if we could take this further, if someone else could take this further, we would look at why. We could speculate on that, but really looking at why are justices finding more and more common ground throughout time, where we expected them to diverge. And why did we expect that? Maybe it's because we are in a political landscape right now that seems more and more divisive. Certainly the rise of social media probably plays a hand in that, where we argue more and more, it seems, on Facebook and Twitter. Our congressmen and women and our senators are arguing on Twitter. And it seems like we are more, again, divisive than ever before. And so we sort of assume that trend is going to appear in all forms of our government. Our judicial branch, fortunately, is not showing that. And maybe this is a hopeful result, that while these justices come from appointments of presidents with different political ideologies, that they appear to be finding more and more common ground throughout time in terms of just their document lengths of majority and distance in majority and dissenting opinions. We talked about in our data ethics class about leaving a project open to participation. We feel like this is an opportunity to leave this open to further participation so someone could maybe answer the question of why. Our justices are finding more common ground throughout time. We can see that that's clear. Why is that happening? Why is that occurring? Is it because they're stuck with each other? Congressmen and women and senators are constantly up for re-election and selling themselves to their constituents on social media. Supreme Court justices don't have to do that. So maybe they find that there is common ground to be had, and there is benefit from agreeing even in their disagreements from time to time. For now, we will leave this open to questions, and we thank you for your time.